All righty, let's get cracking. Harpod Sports, The Bar, podcast, media, audio, radio network. Follow, share, like, subscribe at Harpon Sports on all of your platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Harpon Sports Facebook page, of course. We have podcasts available, Buzzsprout, Apple Podcast, Spotify, also the Harpon Sports YouTube channel, and the harponsports.com website. About a week away from the new one launching. We're up and running at harponsports.com, have been for a while now. I'm just going to get a new revamped website, so looking forward to that. Thing's pretty sharp. Really, really, really cool. Okay, what do we have in store for you today? The SEC 2022 schedule is out. Kind of like where people like recruiting and like things more than what's going on right now. But it is fascinating for a couple of reasons. We're going to look at that. Also, something that I think's disgusting that Oregon football did. Mario Cristobal, the head coach at Oregon, the offensive coordinator, should be embarrassed, should be ashamed of themselves. Outrage is isolated. I don't know why it's isolated. Because I guess I know why. Because people only care about themselves and their world. Wait till you hear what Oregon's head football coach and their offensive coordinator did. I think it's revolting. I think it's disgusting. It's borderline child abuse. It is. It's borderline child abuse. We're going to explain the why. That's coming your way as well. And the Ryder Cup is coming up. Is the Ryder Cup the best sporting event that doesn't come from the Big Four? Basketball, baseball, football, hockey. Is the Ryder Cup the best sporting event that doesn't come from the Big Four? So we're going to look at that. But let's start off first with a little SEC scheduling 2022. And looking at things, I saw something that was interesting. Florida plays 5 of their first 6 games at home, and then 4 of their last 5 on the road. There's quirks in the schedule, but I was looking at the non-conference slate. As we start to get into this discussion about expanding the college football playoff, more teams involved. And the more and more I look at it, the more and more the heavy hitters in this conference, in the SEC, go big. The middle of the pack, stays there. And the bottom of the pack, no risk. No risk. There are some monster games next year. Monster games. Looking at 2022, these are the 3 games that I see on the schedule for next year that completely and totally grab my attention. The third one on that list is Penn State going down to Auburn, week 3. That's awesome. That's awesome. Penn State down at Auburn. Just like Auburn went up to Penn State. You can't tell me that wasn't great. Extremely enjoyable. Awesome on all those platforms. Now you got like Notre Dame, Wisconsin this weekend. I love out-of-conference showcases when you're not in conference play. And tip of the hat to Auburn and Penn State for doing that. That's awesome. That's week 3. Completely and totally has my attention. Next year, looking at SEC matchups, 2022 schedule. That one I have at 3. Georgia and Oregon at number 2. That's awesome. I mean, good gracious. What more can you ask for? Oregon seems to have figured it out a little bit. I think Georgia's the best team in the SEC. And then the number 1 matchup next year is Alabama and Texas. Everybody's laughing at Texas and, Texas is terrible. Texas is awful. Let's not forget they're just a couple years removed. 2 years removed? 2.5 years removed from cleaning Georgia's clock in the Sugar Bowl. Not that long ago, and it's not like this team's 4-8. Everybody acts like Georgia's turned into, or everybody's acting like Texas is turning into Nebraska. Are they what they were 15 years ago? No, they're not. But somehow all of a sudden Texas is this putrid. No, Texas and USC are about the same. They're 8-4, 9-3 type of stuff. But let's save this whole Texas is terrible, Texas is awful. Oh my, crying out loud. It's not true. It's just not. But okay, you want to be that person? Go ahead and be that person. Lose your mind. Like if Texas had a down year, a couple down years. Down year at 9-4, 8-4. So again, Bama, Texas, UGA or Georgia, Oregon, Penn State, Auburn. Looking forward to next year. Those are the 3 big matchups in the non-con that jump out in front of me when it comes to the SEC's new schedule, at least for next year. Other games on there, I'm just going to rip these off too because I wrote them down. No way I can memorize all this stuff. Then I've got my next tier of games that are good but not oh my gosh, amazing, but decent, got my attention type of stuff. Um, Utah at Florida. I think it was Florida at Utah would be more competitive, but Utah coming to Gainesville, playing the first game of the year in September 5th or whenever they're going to play. It's going to be 97 degrees in there. Utah's going to melt. So if it were in the mountains or if it was at Utah, you may grab my attention a little bit. Then, oh my gosh, upset alert. Not here. No way. Arkansas and Cincinnati. Okay. But where Cincinnati is right now as a program, this is something when this was scheduled a couple years ago. It's like, but Arkansas, Cincinnati, okay, that's that next tier. I would have said LSU, Florida State, but I don't know what Florida State's going to be. Florida State going to win a game this year? So that's one of those, it's like, okay. Miami at A&M, that's another one that I'm like, okay, well, Miami A&M, that looks great. Maybe 2 years ago that would have grabbed my attention, but Miami's garbage. So I don't even know what to make of that. So there's kind of those games there. And then I'm not going to give credit to anybody that's taken on a team that's part of their regular repertoire like this. Kentucky and Louisville, you play every year anyway. South Carolina and Clemson, you play every year. Okay, well, Florida plays Florida State. Georgia plays Georgia Tech. I'm not going to give credit to Kentucky for playing Louisville and South Carolina credit for playing Clemson when Georgia's playing Georgia Tech and Florida's playing Florida State. And on top of that, Florida's playing Utah and Georgia's playing Oregon. Sorry, you don't get credit for that. You just don't. Look at our non-conference, our traditional rival. Well, the other big dogs in this conference is traditional rival and a big boy. You're taking on your traditional rival and then Morehead State. So, no. It's ridiculous. And then you got things like Mississippi State, Arizona, Ole Miss, Georgia Tech. Good gracious. What I see here? What's the other one that I saw? Like, okay. Did I knock them all? Oh. Tennessee and Pitt. My alma mater, Western Michigan, just beat Pitt. You're not going to do anything for me. Wake and Bandy, great. Way to go, guys. So, when it comes to the schedule, if you take anything away from it, the big boys scheduled up or scheduled big. Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, Penn State, Auburn. And then, look, Utah and Florida is in that next wave of games. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. That's got my attention. I know LSU, Florida State. I get it. I mentioned Miami and A&M. Who knows what those programs are going to look like next year? But some of this stuff is just awful. God. Tennessee and Pitt and Wake and Vandy. I understand Vandy's. I get it, but come on. And then both Mississippi schools. That's a joke. Oh, sorry, Missouri, Kansas State. I forgot about Missouri and Kansas State. But overall, when I look at that, of those games, I look favored in half and probably not favored in the other half. Bad. But nonetheless, the SEC schedule is out for 2022. And one thing that I do like about it is the changing of games. Because there's a difference between playing. See, people love tradition, but the biggest tradition in college football is that things are constantly changing. We're getting rid of our traditions. What traditions? They change every 5 years. Southwestern Conference gets blown up in the early 90s. The SEC expands, adds 2 more teams. The ACC expands. The Big East expands. I went back through and looked. Did you realize 35 years ago there were 20 independents? In the late 80s. 30 years ago, there were 24, 25 independents in college football. Tradition. You want to go back to the tradition where there were 25 independents and your conferences had 8 teams in them? Everybody, tradition. Oh, this is ruining what? Southwestern Conference blown up. Big 8 turns into the Big 12. Then it goes back to the Big 10. And then it goes back to 10. And now it's going to go back to 12 after it goes to 8. Everybody gets caught up in their traditions. The only tradition that exists is that things are constantly changing. Knock that off. I wish things would stay the same. You mean stay the same as never stay the same? Because that's all college football is constant change. You want tradition, go to the Kentucky Derby. It's horses running in an oval. I want my traditions. I want things to stay the same. Cars don't stay the same in auto racing. It's just one of those things that's just absurd and ridiculous. So I do like the fact that we're looking around at schedules now going, all right, well, look, I know that Florida plays Kentucky in week 5 this year. Next year, playing them in week 2. I love things that move around. They move around in the NFL. Think about this. Does it hurt the Bears-Packers tradition that this game's sometimes on Thanksgiving, sometimes it's on Christmas, sometimes it's the last game of the year, sometimes it's the second game of the year? Does it ruin that? Washington and Dallas. The Cowboys and D.C. Does it ruin that when it's week 4 as opposed to week 9? Well, they play each other twice a year. This whole thing, you got to play each other all the time. The Yankees and Red Sox rivalry ruined if they don't play the final series of the year or the first series of the year, or they don't meet in the postseason that year. Cubs and Cardinals, same thing. I can go up and down sports all over the place and find this. Pick a sport, pick a rivalry. Duke and North Carolina. Think about it. If you took the Duke and North Carolina basketball game and moved it, and it was the first ACC game of the year, would it ruin the rivalry? They always play the final game of the regular season, and quite frankly, I think that kind of blows because they play the last game of the regular season, then they immediately turn around and play in the ACC tournament. I think the fact that Duke and Carolina end the season in basketball is no fun. It's like, oh, we're going to wrap up the regular. They want that to be the ACC championship game, regular season de facto championship game. It never is. So, yeah. But again, I like that the SEC moved games around. I would love, and I understand that you want to keep some of them, like Georgia and Florida is always there around Halloween in Jacksonville, fine. You want to end with your big rival, fine. But you tell me the difference between Florida playing Tennessee September 20th as opposed to Florida playing Tennessee November 8th. No difference. It really isn't. Move these things around. Traditions. Overrated. Okay. Especially those type of traditions. There's that. I want to pivot to another quick college football story before I get into the Ryder Cup. I think this is borderline child abuse, psychological child abuse, not physical, not Penn State type child abuse, but like this is mental. This is awful. I'm not going to mention the kid's name because he's 12. 12. So born in 2009. Mario Cristobal and Joe Moorhead. Mario Cristobal is the head football coach at Oregon. Joe Moorhead's the offensive coordinator. They just offered a scholarship to a 6th grader. A 6th grader. He's been a 6th grader for a month. Which means 3.5 months ago, this kid was in the 5th grade. And Oregon just offered him a scholarship. Is that healthy? Is it? Is Oregon head football coach Mario Cristobal and offensive coordinator Joe Moorhead, is it healthy for the Oregon Duck football program to offer a kid that obviously physically matured early, 6th grade, but mentally at 12 years old, can you handle the capacity as a 12-year-old to have a scholarship to the University of Oregon's football program thrown in your lap? Now, his Pops is on social media and he loves it because Pops doesn't understand that his 12-year-old, look at my scholarship, look at the attention. My kid's getting great attention. Here's why, if you say it's not that big of a deal. Okay, so what? He offered a 12-year-old a scholarship. Here's why Oregon offering a 12-year-old a scholarship is a big deal. I offered you a scholarship. You're 12. What if Oregon yanks it? What if Oregon comes out in 2 months and says, you know what, 12-year-old, we're going to yank your scholarship? At what point are you, if Oregon's offering a scholarship to a 6th grader, a 12-year-old, again, this kid's been in the 6th grade for 100 days. 100 days ago, he's a 5th grader. Think about this. Oregon we've been in this pandemic a long time, but it hadn't been that long. Oregon just offered a football scholarship to a kid that was in the 4th grade when the pandemic started. You cool with that? Oregon just offered a scholarship to a kid that was in the 4th grade when the pandemic started. This kid just entered the 6th grade, offered him a scholarship. If they yank it next year, you cool with the 7th grader having a scholarship yanked? See what it does to you mentally? Think about what a 6th grader is. Think about when you were 12 years old. Zits, going through puberty, all that stuff. liking girls for the first time, going through all that stuff. I remember how emotionally mature I was when I was 6th grade. Not at all. Awful. Just man, Kelly and Zach kissed on Saved by the Bell. Ooh, wow. Wow, that's kind of weird. 6th grade. When it's awkward in gym class to see each other naked in the shower. But we're going to trot out a full ride to Oregon. Yeah, that kid's going to be able, a 6th grader is going to be mentally capable of handling a full ride to Oregon, a scholarship to Oregon. Joe Moorhead and Mario Cristobal should be embarrassed. Anybody not bothered by this at all? Nobody's bothered at all, but with 6th graders getting scholarships offers. What about 5th graders? We cool with a 5th grader getting a scholarship? How about a 4th grader? 6th grade. Oregon offered a scholarship to a 6th grader. I think it's embarrassing. If I were the president of Oregon, I'd be embarrassed. I think it's not good, man. And here's where we are. Because this is how ridiculous this is. Would you be okay with a baseball program offering a scholarship to a kid in the Little League World Series? That's the same age. It's the same age. Actually, now that I think about it, the kids in the Little League World Series are older than this kid because those kids are just wrapping up the 6th grade. This kid just started the 6th grade. Oregon offering full rides to 12-year-olds in football. Yeah, that's not going to mentally damage that kid at all when they yank it when he's in the 7th or 8th grade. There you go, kid, 6th grade. I'm sure that his dad will love it. His dad probably gets to walk around with his Oregon shirt on, Oregon Nike shirt on, going, yeah, did you see my son? Son got a full ride to Oregon. Yeah, that's it. Kids looking at dad like, oh my gosh. People are going to taking cheap shots at him. It just, look how big a physical specimen he is. How can you offer, they don't give a damn about this kid. Come on, they don't care. You can't care about a 6th grader's mental capacity at all. And psychological structure if you're offering full rides. Kids, I just think it's disgusting. I think it's revolting. From that to this, we'll try to end on a happy note. The Ryder Cup's coming up this weekend, and I was trying to think, the biggest event, American sports. The biggest event in American sports is what? It's the Super Bowl. It is. It's the Super Bowl. What's the second biggest event in American sports outside of the Super Bowl? Okay, you can, depending on ratings and you want to look at things, the college football playoff, NBA finals, March Madness. See where we're going? World Series, Stanley Cup finals. I was sitting here and I was thinking about this because the Ryder Cup's coming up. I love the Ryder Cup. The Ryder Cup is my favorite. Now, it's my favorite non-traditional sporting event. I like the Ryder Cup more than I like any major in golf. I do. Team USA's won this twice? The last 22 years? America's won the Ryder Cup twice in the last 22 years? Maybe that's the reason why, because we can't win it. I want to win it, and I think it'd be great if we win it, but we just can't get over the hump when it comes to this thing. Europe always cleaning us up and down the dial, up and down the course. So I just like the Ryder Cup. Team USA versus Europe and the anger and the booing and how, guys like Ian Poulter troll us and they're right. We can't win as a team in America. We can't. I love it. I love the Ryder Cup. And I wrote down a bunch of them. Non-traditional for sports. What's the best? Now, I will always have a place in my heart because it's home. The Indianapolis 500. But let's face it, that's not the same. Now, that's what I personally like as opposed to what it is. The most popular sporting event that's watched by the most people in the world is Bueller. It's the Tour de France. Tour de France has the most viewers in the world, 3.6 billion, something like that. Then it's the World Cup. I like the World Cup too. Every 4 years, the Olympics, okay, enjoyable, I get it, but the non-traditional sporting events, this is one of my favorite. Now, I wrote down a couple more, like you got certain tennis, like Daytona 500, then you have Wimbledon, the US Open, the Australian Open and French Open don't do much for me, and they don't. in tennis. I watch them, but they just don't. Boxing, but okay, if you go back and give me Holyfield and Tyson, Bo and Holyfield, okay. But boy, those things don't exist anymore. Horse racing, when the Triple Crown's involved, maybe, but then again, that whole entire event, by the time you add up all the time, how long it takes, it's 7 minutes. Actually, it's not even that long, is it? All 3 races. So the Ryder Cup, it's this weekend. And it's my favorite non-traditional 4 sporting event. You leave anything out? I guess you could. Well, it's one of the traditional 4. I'd say the NFL draft, but that's one of the traditional 4. I guess you could go through individual sports, and I guess worldwide, worldwide it'd be the Tour de France one, but then you've got like cricket finals and rugby finals and things of that nature, the Rugby World Cup, and again, soccer, the Women's World Cup and the Men's World Cup. Those are gigantic on the global stage. But to me, this is the most American sporting event that we have left. I'm talking about like Team USA. The Ryder Cup's the last bastion of Team USA. The Olympics, we had people openly rooting against American athletes in the Olympics this year. So Team USA, this is the thing that I'm most patriotic about in sports. At least here in America, Team USA it is. I find myself openly cheering for Team USA against Europe in this thing. So the Ryder Cup to me is the last Team USA sport that. Look, I root for Team USA and other things, but this is one of these things that I kind of stop what I'm doing, and if we lose, I'm like, damn it, we lost again. Like, if Team USA loses in soccer, I'm like, all right, sucks. But this one, it doesn't bother me, because nothing really bothers me in sports anymore. But it's one of these things that's like, oh, man. There you go. All right, Harp on Sports, the bar. You can check out this podcast and the other podcast by logging on to harponsports.com and checking out the podcast page and also our video page, a Harp on Sports Facebook page as well. Of course, you can check out every podcast at Spotify, Buzzsprout, and Apple Podcasts as well. Still working on the website. We're almost done. Next 2 weeks here, we'll have it all done for you. So there you go. And remember, stay clean, stay focused, stay strong. Frankenstein. Have fun with your friends.